I don't have that pre-contractor year-end training on mine.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, your screens may look a little differently according to what kind of access you have.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the year-end training, and once you're here, you want to go to the U.S. part of it. And this entire thing covers payroll, accounts payable, and general ledger. We're really only going to cover payroll today. And when mine is saying resume because I've already been in it, but you should have a different blue button down here that says, I don't know, go to class or start or something like that. So you want to go in there. I'm just going to kind of give you a little tour of this. We're not going to sit here and read off and go through every item in here because it would take a little too long.
This looks different to me.
Okay, yours will open up a little bit differently than mine did because mine is picking up at the end where I left off. So I've got to go back a little bit, but you should see some kind of a menu here on the left-hand side. If you need to click these little horizontal lines here, you can, but I'm not sure if you're seeing that. But where I'm trying to get you to is this these first couple of items, like the helpful links. Can everyone see that?
My course is loading.
Okay. So you'll be able to see links for Viewpoint business forms for ordering your W-2s and 1099s. And very important, the link for the software and tax updates, which we'll talk about in a minute that you'll need to load. You've also got some IRS links. AccuWage Online, you will need to, if you haven't already, you will need to apply for that number so you can upload your W-2s. Same thing on the instructions. This is the link here is the instructions for the 1094C and 1095C. This is for your ACA reporting, for those of you who are subject to it. This fire system you may be familiar with. If you've done it last year and the previous years, you may have to renew it every year. I think those passwords they give you or PIN codes expire. So make sure you go on that site and take care of that before it's down to the last minute. Okay. So the way this whole little help program works, when you're in one little section of it, like this says at the top, lesson 1 of 11, to navigate around, you just go to these same little double, triple horizontal lines here, and that toggles on your table of contents on the left. So as you can see, you've got a topic on all the different things you need to be concerned with year end. You've got bonus checks, taxable fringes, how to do leave resets, and so on. And what I want you to make sure you do first is this payroll checklist. And it's a Word document. So go ahead if you like. I mean, you don't have to, but I'd recommend it, is to just download it and you can save it or print it. And it's just a simple little bullet point checklist of the main things you do. It doesn't have the details of how to do each thing. Just things you try to remember.
Leslie, I'd like to, but mine's still loading, so is Nancy's.
Okay. Well, I don't know why, but
what you're doing.
What point are you? What is it that's still loading? Clearview itself? Is it?
No, I mean I'm in Clearview in the page where it says payroll, accounts payable, general ledger, and then I said open item.
Mm-hmm.
That's trying to load up.
Okay. Well, just watch along then, and then.
Yeah, that's something I can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So under each of the items, there's like 9 little bullet point items on the checklist. If you're still online, you can further drill down under each one, step 1, when it talks about balancing accumulations or whatever. notice these links to the right that say go to KB article. So KB is the knowledge base. So that's a printed knowledge base article with more detail about how to do each one of these items. Okay. And after that, from that point on, when it comes down to getting more into the weeds of how to do these things on each part of this class, there's what I really like about it is how there's so many different ways to look at it. So under each topic, for example, this one is how to process a bonus check. You have 3 choices, and everybody likes to learn differently. So you can either read it, or you can watch it, or you could go to additional information. You could download the steps here. So if you click on read, the little plus sign, then it's got all the steps listed out. If you click on watch, it's a little tutorial, it's a little video, and they've got screenshots, and that's kind of nice. Some people like this because they'll have their own Vista program open on one monitor while they're watching this on another and just kind of follow through. Additional information, that just depends on which topic you're under as to what if anything, is going to be under that. So again, you can read it or watch it. And again, to go back to the main menu, just go in here. So this is like the full thing, that I really want to encourage everybody to go through step by step when you're ready for it. But I do want to hit on a few of the high points and give you some of my own recommendations. And one of the first things on the list, well, the first thing on the list, first of all, is to complete the final payroll. Just normal year-end regular payroll. You don't have to do anything different. There's nothing major, like in some softwares, you have to finish your last payroll and then you have to move everything over into another file and save it before you can start processing payroll in 2019. That is not the case with Vista. All you have to do is to make sure that before you run your first payroll of 2019 that you have loaded the tax update. And whoever, is in charge of your IT somebody should be getting a notification when it's available. It's usually right down to the wire, because sometimes there are tax law changes and they come in, right at the end of the year. So it takes them a little time to get those tax updates loaded. Once IT has loaded the update, you're still not ready, and they can load it, and it'll be on your server, or it'll be in the, if it's in the cloud, you don't have to do this step. They'll be doing it already. But just because it's loaded in the back end, the new rates will not work on the front end when you process that first payroll until you update your routine master. So for those of you who have never had to do this before, if you're not familiar with it, in payroll, yes, so we need for everybody for now to mute themselves, or I can mute you. We're hearing some background noises. And then if you have a question, you can just unmute yourself. Thanks.
Leslie, will you tell me exactly where you are? I was late getting into the webinar.
Oh, that's okay. So we're in a couple of places. We did, we're going back and forth, but right now everybody's supposed to be logged into Clearview and kind of following along as we talk about some of these items on this checklist. Get this one open. Yeah. So we're talking about number 1, completing the final payroll of the year. There's a bunch of other things that we're going to talk about in a minute. Balancing your accumulations is a big one. Running all these year-end reports and so on. But the point I wanted to make, though, is that anytime as soon as it's ready, as soon as you get the notification that the New Year's tax updates are ready, your IT people can go ahead and load it, but it's still not going to affect any processing until you do the routine master that I was about to show. So in payroll, you have a menu item called Payroll Routine Master. So let's say it's December 20th and you still got another December payroll to do. On the back end, they can download the new tax routine and have it loaded so that it's ready, but you control when it actually takes effect in your payroll. You control that on the front end. So you control that by going into the payroll routine master and saying File, Initialize, and it'll ask if you want to initialize payroll routine information. You say yes, and at that point in time, you'll know that it's got the New Year's information by, if you go to, it's got one for each state, for example, but if you go to federal, notice the procedure name ends in 18. So that's telling me that I've got the latest 2018 tax routine. It didn't change to 19 because 19 is not available yet. Okay. So again, just before you process your first payroll of 2019, you've got to do this step. Okay. Just want to be sure everybody knows that. It does tell you that in the release notes. Anytime you get a new update to load, you'll get release notes, so make sure you're reading those, and it should tell you this too as well. And it will also instruct you that the other things that you have to make sure that you do that the loading of this routine does not do. Remember, these are only the routines, so all of your deduction codes and liability codes, I'm sorry, wrong one. Notice you've got this calculation category and you've got a method of routine. So that's, all of the ones that have routine for the method, that's what it's going to do. It's going to update those routines, meaning it's going to load all of the new tax tables and make them available. So if it's not a routine, then it won't do anything automatically. So what that means is certain items like FICA and Medicare, you will have to go in and update this amount, the threshold amount. That's not right. That's an old one. This is an old database. Sorry. Medicare is 0 and so on. So just remember, you do have to do that. Anything that has a threshold, you've got to go in and update it. The different SUTA codes may or may not change. At some point, you have to come in and change your rate. If you work in Georgia, then you probably know you don't get your new unemployment rate until sometimes as late as March. And that's a lot of fun to go back and fix that retroactively, but that's the way it is, and that's where you have to put that new rate. And this is where you've got to put the limit, because it will not be automatic. Okay? So on the accumulations, again, you can go back to the little tutorial and you can see the class, and I do recommend that you read the information about how to balance your accumulations. And what it's going to tell you is in words what I'm going to show you in an example in numbers. So this is a little kind of methodology that I've been using for quite a while. I know a few of you have seen this before if I've done your implementation. This is an example of the payroll employee accumulations report. If you go to the last page and run this, what you're really concerned with are these numbers in the last column. These are your year-to-date numbers, which I apologize, I don't have headings. For some reason, when it's saved it as a PDF, it lost my headings. And I've got like a little spreadsheet where I think that there are certain key tests that you need to do. And I'll be happy to send this out to anybody if you'd like as an example later after the class. So I've got FIT wages test, meaning E minus H minus G equals A. So don't ever let anyone tell you that you'll never use your algebra again. So here's where it comes in handy. So what is this E, H, G, and A? What are these numbers? Where are these letters coming from? Again, back to your accumulations. I've got them coded for an example. So I used E. This is your true earnings. Does everybody see that right here? Total true earnings. So true earnings are the earnings that are subject to some kind of tax. They're your W-2 wages. They're pretty much anything and everything except for, say, employee reimbursements. Okay. And what you want to do is make sure that things tie, for example, your federal income tax subject wages here by the letter A. Well, that should be your true earnings minus all of your pre-tax deductions, right? So here are your pre-tax deductions. Down here at the bottom, this letter G and H, medical insurance and 401k. Okay, so referring back to the spreadsheet, that's the E is the true earnings, and then minus the $33 and the $50 equals 72,508. There's 72,508. Check that one off the list. We're done. Similarly, Social Security and Medicare are the same thing, except you can't take out your 401k. So it's that 33 is not part of the formula. And again, I will be happy to share this with the disclaimer that you cannot use the exact same codes that I've got flagged on here as you're going to have in your system. So you've got to have an understanding of what is and isn't taxable. You know, I've only got one simple little medical insurance code and one 401k code, but you may have dozens. I mean, you may have multiple health, dental, vision insurance plans that are all pre-tax. So you would have to know which ones they are and subtract them out and do the math. A few other examples, the FICA tax. So, you know, does the eligible rate times 6.2% equal the amounts that it's calculating? So these are the kind of tests that, of course, you want to do at year end, but I highly recommend that you do it throughout the year, especially if you're new and you're just going live. So, you know, if you're just going live, you should start doing this like right away with your very first payroll. And then after that, maybe check it at the end of each month before you do your monthly reports, and then definitely check it at the end of each quarter before you do your quarterly reports. This will save you an enormous amount of headaches further on down the line, because I've seen so many things that can go wrong if you're not checking these numbers. Okay. Let me just, sorry, I've got to check my meeting every now and then. All right. Any questions so far about accumulations? And you'll have to unmute yourself if you do have a question, because I can't see if you're talking. One other tip I want to give you is that if you discover, or if your insurance changes for any reason, the nature of it changes from being pre-tax to non-pre-tax or vice versa, don't just simply go into that code and change it in the middle of a year. I mean, you can change it if it's an error, but if it actually changes, like maybe you're a new startup company and you didn't have a, you know, pre-tax document, you know, plan document ready, and now the next year you do, don't use the same code. It's better to inactivate the code that's not correct and create a new one. So in your payroll employee deductions and liabilities, you can create a frequency code that says I for inactive, so it will quit using that one, and you just pick up and use the new one. And the reason is this employee accumulations report, it pulls numbers based on the current settings. So by current settings, whether or not something is flagged as pre-tax, you know, will change how these numbers compute. And that also affects the first page of your 941. It's just whatever is, you know, it's just going to do the math based on the eligible earnings times the rates and so on, and subtract out the currently set pre-tax deductions, not how it was set up at the time you ran payroll. So that's a very important point. If you go in and start changing any setups, remember that. Okay. So by now, if you've been live for a little while, you should have some familiarity with a quarterly filing, and I'm not going to really cover that right now, but feel free to reach out to me if you need help with that. But the quarterly payroll reports are in Vista. You should probably have already seen them. You may have already done some, but they're there in the reports. The 941 for, I'm going to go actually back, how many years? We don't have, okay, I know why 2018 is not in here. I apologize. This is an old database, and I haven't given myself security access to it yet. So, as far as just the basic payroll, that's pretty much it in terms of what you need to make sure you're doing and checking on in order to do all of your filings at the end of the year. For your W-2s, everything on W-2 comes out of one little area called Payroll W-2 Process. You don't have to jump all over the place. So once everything's in balance and you're good to go with your W-2s, and again, this is not something that you have to hurry up and do before you can start processing 2019 payroll. You can start processing 2019 as soon as you've got your tax updates, and then you can come in here and do this. Hopefully, you won't be doing it on January 31st, but you can. I think quite a few of us did that. I know I did last year. One important point, if you don't remember this already from your implementation, is that Vista does not produce the federally filed pink, copies of the W-2s that go to the feds. It's only set up for online filing. So it's very important that you get set up and get registered with the IRS and get your PIN code and everything ready to go for the online filing. It will print all the others copies. So again, you can go. I'll walk through. I'll do a quick overview of some of the steps, but it's also in the tutorial. The step for the W-2 processing. It goes into a lot more detail about how to do all this. So when you create a new tax year, and this is already set up, it's going to pull in all basic information from your company setup. So if you don't have your company address and your federal ID number and all located up there in your headquarters, it's not going to pull in. But initializing the header, I'm not going to redo mine, but the first time you do it, you won't get this message. The first time you do W-2s and you're going to hit initialize federal. If you've done them in the previous year and you hit initialize federal, all of this information will populate. If it's your first year, then you've got to manually type it in, but it's a one-time thing. So these item codes are really not necessarily going to be your own payroll deduction liability codes. These codes are right here. But these item codes, these are IRS specific. It has to do with electronic filing. For example, number 55 is the code that you've got to use for the employer provided health insurance. Okay. If you have deferred comp, it's number 10. So again, in your tutorial that I pointed out in Clearview, you'll get this same information, and it'll show you all these examples and let you know what needs to go in here. You can also click inside any one of these boxes and hit your F1 key, and F1 will take you straight to the help, and it'll give you the most current list. But what you're doing is you're mapping these IRS codes to your own Vista deduction codes or liability codes. Okay. Everybody follow that? It's when you go to do it on your own system, it'll probably make more sense because it'll be codes that you're familiar with. But it's very important. You've got to have them in here. Once you've loaded them, you don't want to initialize the federal again because it'll wipe them out in the first year. State and local information. If you hit initialize state, after you click that tab and you hit initialize state, it'll pull in the same information from last year. The first year, again, you've got to put in the states and tell it what deduction codes. Actually, this one should populate. I apologize. You shouldn't have to populate these manually. And then employees. Come in when you initialize, but I've already initialized them. I'm trying to think of at what point they did. It was in the federal. All your employees will come in. So I've only got a few items, a few people in this case that populated when I did after doing all these initializations. If you want to see, there's a report I'll show you in a minute, but if you want to just see them on the screen and you need to edit anything manually, you would have to double click it over here on the left, and it'll pull up that person's information, including all of their federal information and all of their state information. Hopefully you won't have to do that. And you almost never need to go in and do anything or look at that, but you could. And then after that, you've got this preview and print W-2. Like I said, everything is done from within this one little menu item. And the nice thing is you can go through and you can do this W-2 preview, and it's going to give you the information that would print on your W-2s. It's not the actual W-2s. I'm waiting. I did click it. I'm waiting. Oh, let's try it that way. Sorry. Here it comes. Okay. There's Clark Griswold's W-2. So this is something that you can print without wasting, any of your actual forms. If you want to print them off and go through and check them, proof them. But at the very end, if you go to the last page, it will tell you how many forms it needs. And in this case, it says 3. So that is the actual number of pieces of paper. Okay, because we get a lot of questions like, does that mean, that there's 3 employees? Or no, it doesn't mean that there's 3 employees. That means, in this case there is, because this is a really super simple database example. But if you've got employees in multiple states, it will need, more for those employees. It will need more forms for one employee. But this is the total number of forms you would actually need to order. So I will show you what they look like. If you buy the blank ones, I'll leave it on preview, and we're going to say let's print the copies that go with the tax returns, or we can do print employee copies also. Let's just do them both. Preview employee W-2s. There's a really big delay here. Sorry. Here we go. There you go. So they're basically the 4 on a page type. This is the style. This is the only format that Vista prints. If you're not going to do any customization, this is the format. So you don't necessarily have to buy them from Viewpoint Business Forms. You can go anywhere that has this specific format of 4 forms to a page. there's only 3 because this employee only needs 3. There's copy B, there's his copy C, and there's his copy 2. He's only got 1 for Georgia. He could have to have a second one for another state. And sometimes it even runs, one employee's W-2s could even run into a second page. But this ends at 3 pages. So for them, you would just need those 3. Any questions so far on the W-2s?
I was a little bit confused at first because I ordered my forms already and I just got the 1-sheeter, but I guess it's the B and C and all that's on that 1 page.
Yeah, it's gonna print. I mean, if you order them, yeah, if you order just the blank forms where Viewpoint prints all the boxes and everything, and that, in fact, I think that is the only choice at this point. That's
that's
the way
what
they
I
do
got.
it now. Yeah, that's what you'll get. You'll get the perforated, 4, and it'll just print everything, so you don't have to worry about the alignment being perfect and all of that. So,
yeah.
So I do recommend, that you go ahead and preview them first and proof them first before you print them all, of course. You can export it and save it as a PDF. You can come back at any time and print these for employees who lose theirs. You can just, print theirs. Notice it's got this beginning and ending employee number here. So you can just use that to print 1 for somebody. So let me close back, and this will take us back into the W-2 process menu. And so the only last item on here is the electronic filing. So when these are due to the Social Security Administration, this is what you're going to do to create the electronic file. So all you're going to do is fill in whatever's needed here. You may not have any third-party withholding. You probably don't. State, if you need to do a state, I would do them 1 at a time, though, and just say export. And okay, I'm not set up, I know. In your case, if you do, if you've got all the information filled out, you can do an export, and it's just going to save the text file, just like if you're doing direct deposit payroll, and you're just going to save it someplace where you can go back and retrieve it when you're online with the IRS system to upload it. And again, it's not going to work if you don't have all of this information in here correctly. Definitely the tax ID number, the user ID number. That's what you have to get from the IRS. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else real critical. So the only other required field is this email. Notice I forgot to point out this option over here to initialize retirement plan box. The normal default setting you want is to only check it for the employees who actually are enrolled in your retirement plan. If you have a qualified pre-tax retirement plan, that box is supposed to be checked. Okay. Any questions?
Where do you set up the state? Do you set up the state information where you would do electronically, like information that it needs? Where do you set that up?
Right. So here is it's just pointing to these deduction codes. So the place that it has to be really set up, you've got to be sure that you've got information in your payroll state information right here. Under each state, you see how you've got the tax ID, and if it's subject to state income tax, you would have a tax deduction number. I guess Alaska doesn't. So you're mapping all those things there. Now this is all for unemployment. I'm trying to think. I don't know that there's not a place here to put the states. Any kind of this is, and I apologize because I'm not too familiar.
The remitter number. I don't think many of them have remitter numbers, mostly just a file, but.
Right. I don't think I've seen any transmitter numbers. At least I know it's not for Georgia, and I know some companies have had problems with Georgia in the last couple of years since they started rolling out their required electronic filing now. Let me come back in here. Because this is just the codes, but in the there isn't any other place. I'm pretty sure all you're going to do with the state is create the file and save it, and like you said, just upload it. I don't think there's anything. And again, I guess it would vary by the state. If I put Georgia in here, there's not any other required information, or any place to put any other piece of information. So you're going to probably have to need some more help by going on your state's website for their electronic filing requirements.
Okay.
I mean, Viewpoint's supposed to, my understanding is it's supposed to create whatever file the states need, but so many states, change things from year to year, so there could be a lag and there could be an issue, and I think Georgia did have an issue last year. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let me talk for a moment about leave codes. With employee leave, I don't know if anybody on the call is tracking employee leave. If you are not, this probably won't be as much interest to you.
Yes, it's been a nightmare for us.
Okay.
It never works.
Yeah.
It never wants to work.
Yeah, there's a lot involved in that. So
something's not open. There's something. It's just.
Right.
I don't understand why we put it track leave, since you have to track vacation and stuff in the land.
I'm not printing. I'm looking for something I thought I printed. Okay. Never mind. Employee leave is a lot to it. I will show you some screenshots in a moment on my own little database. But what I really recommend is that you go through. This is another tutorial available in Clearview. You could just search on employee leave under Vista, and you should find this little program. It's called Payroll and Implementing Leave. It's implementing and processing, really. And it's a training video. And when you play it, I'm on a server that actually doesn't have sound, but you can kind of see what it looks like. This is 2 hours long. So obviously in the time we have today, I can't go through 2 hours of instructions. But it's great because it gives you examples on your setups, and you'll see in a moment. And it's got Nora Bowling, I believe, is the instructor, and she's got a nicer voice than I do anyway. But she'll be talking, and you can pause it, of course, at any time. And what's nice is, let me go fast forward a little bit somewhere here. You've got, it explains the difference between whether you're using fixed payroll or you're doing a rate per hour in terms of how you accrue it. Here's what I wanted to show you. So as she walks through each step this is the setup screen. Notice she's got everything coded out with little explanations over here in red. So it's nice because you've got all the screenshots. You've got screenshots of every screen that has anything to do with setting up leave. And it's got under each item an explanation. And plus she discusses it. It's discussed at great length and in great detail. One of the things that's important that comes into play is resets. So if you haven't been doing resets at the beginning of your year, this could definitely cause you some problems. So a couple of other points I know she'll make is when you're first setting it up before you go live, you don't want to enter any of the limits, which are, I know it's hard to see, probably hard to see down here near the bottom. You don't want to enter the limits until after you've entered everyone's beginning balances. Because if you try to post beginning balances and they've already hit their limits, somehow it's going to mess up and it's going to subtract leave hours from them, and that's not right because you're trying to enter it up to what it should be at this point in time. Let me just, instead of this is, I know this is going to be too hard to see, but I wanted to point it out and let you know it's available. Let me just go into mine. So this is an example for a fixed leave. So in this case, it's that's FMLA, sorry. Let's go to vacation. All right, so if you have multiple tiers, if you have, if a person's been here for, if they're new, they get 40 hours in the first year, and then maybe after 3 years, they get 80 hours or something like that. We don't recommend that you set up different leaves for that. You should have just one standard leave code for whatever their the initial one, the beginning one is that people get when they're first hired, and then use employee overrides. If you use multiple leave codes, it's a lot more difficult to maintain that, and then you don't have the ability to get like a good history on any individual employee because you have to then have different reports for each code. So it's just much cleaner and easier to do it this way with one, and then use employee overrides. The fixed accrual and the frequency. So in this example, this means that once a year, an employee is given an accrual of 80 hours. So this is a little bit different. And in the tutorial, it'll show you two different types of examples, like in another one where they get, instead of getting 40 hours or 80 hours on the 1st of January, you want your system to accrue, say, 0.77 hours per week. So every week that payroll is run, they're getting a fraction of an hour or something, or a fraction of a day or something added to their balance. And so you can set it up either way. So if you're doing it this way as a fixed amount, you've got to be sure to go in and fill in this accrual usage information. So this is just establishing what exactly is your earnings code that you use in your system when a person uses leave. In this case, there's two. There's one for hourly people and a different one for salary people. And it's a 1-to-1 ratio. In other words, if for every 1 hour of earnings code 8, subtract 1 hour of leave. That's the way that works. On your resets, let me see if this one, let me check that. Personal time. Okay, here's an example of a rate per hour. So like 6.67 is the accrual limit. The reset frequency is yearly, but the frequency is monthly. Okay, so this is 6.67 hours per month. Not to exceed 80 hours per year. Okay, so if there are limits, you must do resets, because if you don't process the resets at the end, at the appropriate point in time, it'll just keep carrying, and it won't work. So when you run reports and it shows you, or if you choose to put it on their employee pay stub where it shows their balance, like for the current year accrual amount, the year to date won't be closed and start. You want year to date to start from 0 at the beginning of each year, and have just the year to date amount, what they've accrued in this year, separated from last year. And what comes into play too is the available balance limit. So this is saying in this setup that we're looking at, this company allows you to have a balance up to 80 hours total. You can never accrue more than 80 hours, and there's no carryover there's no carryover limit. So with the 0 carryover limit, and it's indefinite. So one thing that comes up a lot is, what if it's not on the 1st of the year? What if it's what if you want to reset it based on their hire date? So that's a little bit more of a complicated setup. And so what I recommend you can do is do like 12 frequency codes, like maybe number them 1 through 12 for January, February, so on for each month. And then when you run the program, you can use that month, that code to populate a batch, but then you can go into the batch and change it to the actual date. So what I mean by that is if you're doing a, okay, I have a locked batch somewhere. Let me try something else. I'm sorry, I didn't know I had open batches.
Yeah, we get that message all the time.
Yeah, it's locked me out.
Even when we don't have them.
Yeah.
It's horrible setup. It's horrible. Horrible.
Yeah. I mean, I did. It's believe it or not, it's not too terribly complicated to fix when it does get messed up by just overriding it and creating a batch of what everyone's codes should be at a given point in time. Sorry, not where I was going. Great, and I don't know which month it is. Oh, here it is. Yay, I guessed right. Oh, that's not locked. Batch 12. I don't know. Here it is. Okay. Well, if you get that message, you've got to go to batch process and pull it back in. For some reason, it must have gotten validated but never finished or something. So I'm going to just go to File, Clear Batch, and say yes, so that I can go back into it. Nope. Nope. I apologize, guys. I don't know. I was just in this a few days ago and it didn't have any problems. Okay. Payroll leave entry is where you would go to add leave hours or accrue hours manually, but it's also the place where that gets populated when you run the auto leave accrual or usage that I was just trying to get into and couldn't get into. So if you do the auto leave, all it does is it goes out automatically and finds things for you. Think about how when you do automatic payroll, kind of same type of thing. It's going in and creating a batch and it'll look like what you see right here. So you can do it, automatically as you go through your normal payroll processing. But when you're trying to go live and for the first time at the initial setup, you'll need to come in here and create a batch like this manually. So this is saying for this vacation code, so this is a reset batch. I'm sorry. I see what this one is now. This is one I tried to play with the other day. If you create a reset batch, if you use the auto reset and it populates a batch like this and you're using frequency codes like I described, say 1 for January, 2 for February. So all the people who need to be reset in January, and let's say you did it automatically, so it populated everybody on January 13th. Well, what's nice is it still saves you some time because you can go through now and change the ones that need to be different to put their exact reset date right here in this box. It's not grayed out. It'll let you change it to whatever it needs to be. Okay. And it will do the reset when you post this batch. Okay. Well, I don't know what I did, but I've got an error. Must be ARU. Okay. I don't know. But just keep that in mind, and feel free to contact me after January sometime, especially if you've got one that's not just real simple to be done on the first of the year. I'll be happy to go through it with you. It's just this. It's so much better working with your own live data than this demo right now. It's just as you can see, there's some really old years and old information already set up in here. Vista does this. They create this demo database, and they did it years ago, and they've got years going back to like 2007 full of information. And we as consultants don't really, if we didn't set it up, we don't really know. We're kind of guessing as to where it came from and how it got there. But there's really only a few simple steps when it comes to processing leave. You've got to start out with your beginning balances, and all of these are outlined in that tutorial, and you can actually print. There's actually a printed checklist on how to do it, just like that initial checklist I showed you. So you're going to want to enter, say, their 12/31/18 balances at the end of this year. In a 2018 batch, you enter their balances. You make sure you set up the fixed or the rate type of accrual that you want to use. You get it all set up. And then after you post their beginning balances, then you can go back and enter any kind of limits and carryover limits. So the accrual it could be at a limit as far as how much you accrue, and then there can be a limit as to how much they're allowed to carry over. So you've got to really be aware of your company policy. And again, just set up one standard. That's the norm when people first start out. And then when you send it over to the employees and you set them up under employee leave, you can then go in and do any overrides. Let's look at it instead of the grid view under info. So you see the employee override. So this guy, the standard in gray was the 80 hours that you saw earlier on my setup, but this guy gets 160 hours. Okay. Same thing with the carryover limit. So if somebody else has instead of 40 hours, they get carryover of 80 hours, you can just put 80 in there. And it's giving you the last date that it was reset. So if you did not do the reset in the prior years and needed to, you'll have to do that. Accrual usage overrides is extremely rare. That's if for some reason, one employee actually has a different earnings code than what was in the setup. So in the setup, we used, they had like this 8 and 9 for vacation. If you have, I don't know, something different for owners and officers, maybe, I don't know, you could override it there. I've honestly never seen that used. But again, you have to, set up the normal and then do your employee overrides as needed. So any questions? I hate to even ask that question because I know there's a lot more to it than the little bit I've shown you. It's just one of those things that it takes, 2 to 3 hours to really train on it in depth. But I don't want it to scare you, because it does seem intimidating. It does seem like it's challenging at first, but once you get in the routine and you do it and include it as part of your weekly processing, it's really easy. And what else is good about it is that you could do it retroactively at any time. So that's a really nice thing. You can go in, let's say you've got too much on your plate for January with getting out the W-2s and everything, and you're tracking the leave in Excel. You know what their balances are. You're keeping up with it. But maybe around March or something, you might decide now would be a good time to implement it. When you go in to create a batch, like to say, like let's say to give everybody their new hours, 40 hours or 80 hours or whatever at the beginning of the year. And you go to this auto leave accrual and usage. Let me see if I can even open it. Hopefully, yes. Okay. Notice you've got two different sections here about updating fixed accruals or the usage type. So the fixed accruals, again, are the easiest one. And when you do that, you put the accrual date. You can put an accrual date of 1/1/19, even if you're sitting down to do this in March, and it's putting that in their balance. And then you've got to tell the system, okay, now that I've done that, let's go in and look back at all the leave they took between January 1st and today. So when you go down here to the bottom and you do this step, notice it's got a beginning and ending payroll ending date. So if you put in the first date of the year till whatever the last payroll you ran was, it's going to go out and search for anybody that used that earnings code that you set up for vacation or PTO. And it can be 1 month, it can be 3 months, it can be 6 months, it doesn't matter. And it's going to go through and find it all and record that as leave usage and subtract it from their balance. So it's really nice that you can just do a catch-up thing at any point during the year and get going and get it implemented. The key is to know and have somewhere offline what their balance should be at that point in time. Okay. ACA, big one. Okay, at this point, if you are not subject to ACA reporting, you may want to drop off the call because I'm just going to talk through that again a little bit. And it's kind of like the leave processing. There's a lot to it. I can only really show you a few of the high points. There is a tutorial on it, just like the leave. All you really have to do, what I would do is go into Clearview. Okay, why is it all white? I have a white screen now. Maybe it timed out on me. Oh, that's not good. Okay, well, I can't show you Clearview now. If you have human resources, and I hope all of you do on this call, if you don't have the human resource module, the ACA reporting is so much more difficult. But if you do, it's pretty nice. It's not perfect. There is some manual entry that is required. But the first thing you want to start doing as soon as possible, don't wait till the end of the year, start like now if you haven't already, is go into your resource master. Sorry. It's suddenly gotten very slow. Okay, let's see. Here we go. In your resource master, you've got a tab somewhere up here. Here it is, ACA history. This is what you need to be working on as soon as possible, is populating this table. And I'm going to show you a few little tips to shortcut methods. You've probably, you may have heard the term look back or look back groups. In Vista, when they refer to look back groups, they're referring to how to set it up where the system can determine full-time equivalency status. 99% of the time, you won't really need to use it for that because you may already know, or you should already know, everyone's full-time equivalency status. And honestly, the companies that I've worked with so far have all been, now this is coming up, sorry. Have all been, telling me, well, we really don't have any or many part-time. We know that we have enough full-time employees to be subject to this reporting, so they don't even really need to do the test, because you have to have, I don't remember what the latest number is, you have to have so many full-time equivalent employees in order to be subject to this law and have to do this reporting. And if you don't have that many employees, then you're not. So by now, most companies really already know that and don't need to use the look back codes for that reason. I'm trying to get there, I'm sorry. So there's a little workaround, there's a little way we can trick the system to use these look back groups if needed for populating that grid I showed you earlier. And in this, hang on. Man, I'm so sorry, this is so slow. I don't know what's going on all of a sudden. It's just not responding. Okay. So it uses a series of measurement dates. There's an admin start, admin end, blah, 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 blah. So I've got examples of these. If anybody needs to use this to really do the full-time equivalency test, let me know, and I can send you some examples that the IRS put out about, what these pieces of information mean. And then it's only going to work if you've been recording hours. So there've got to be hours in your payroll system to even do the test. It's got to go back and literally look back over the last 12 months to see, the hours that a person worked and apply these dates to it to determine their status. So if you're not using that, if you don't need that, another great use of look back groups is to populate that grid with the Series 1 code that I showed you earlier, for the people who have full year coverage. So what you can do is you can create a look back group number 1, and let's call it full year coverage, okay? And then over in the resource master, under this payroll information, just go ahead and assign look back group 1. No, I don't want to do his because I already did his manually. To all the people who have been here the whole year, and you're pretty sure they're going to stay. I mean, you can always change it if they leave you. Let me just do it on a couple of people. Yeah. And he's full-time. So I'm not going to worry about any of these measurement start and end dates and so on. And again, that's for the more complex setups when you have to have the system do the test for you. But if you know who your full-time people are, then that's all you need to do. So let's assign everybody who's been here and is going to, and be enrolled in the coverage. They're your long-term employees. And let's just throw them in look back group 1. Because what that does is it allows you to go up here under tasks and say initialize the coverage offer. So the offer date, we're going to make it on the 1st of the year. And expiring the end of the year, even though it may not ever expire. That's what you've got to do. You've got to know your offer code. Most companies are using either 1A or 1E is what I've seen the most of so far. That's not something I'd be able to answer for you. That you would look at last year's forms, I guess, or talk to your insurance broker or whoever's been helping you in the past to make that determination as to what kind of plan you have. You pretty much are going to get it from your insurance agent. They should know that. And then we're going to restrict it to look back group 1. Okay. And let's just do only the full-time employees. Okay. So if you make sure you don't forget to put that look back group 1 in, otherwise it's going to initialize it on every single employee in your company. But if you do that and then you hit initialize, what that does is it goes through, and now we can go to the, let's see if he was one of them, the ACA history tab. There it is. On some of the people. I don't think I got as far as his. Pretty sure I did his. And there it is. Actually, it's in there twice because his is one that I did manually earlier, so I'll delete that one. No. I'll delete that one. 18 is the one I did. Okay. Anyway, those are 15 and this is 18, so that's okay. They're separate years. So anyway, I've got, again, I apologize because I've got so much other junk in here. Let me see if it did anyone else's. No, just his. Okay. So anybody with a look back group 1 assigned to them that I had flagged as full-time and that had earnings, that was probably part of the problem. It's going to put them, it's going to fill out that Series 1 code for you. So that's one less thing that you have to enter manually. It doesn't automatically do the Series 2 code, but under the latest, I want to say going back maybe to version 6.14 or 6.15 in Vista, if you're at least that, far, which you should be by now, there is a new field in the benefit codes. Let's see. Right here, this ACA Series 2 code. So we've got to find one that's a medical. Here he is. So if this medical benefit code, which let me show you that setup, you've got to make sure that it's flagged as an ACA health plan. So in your HR, if you're setting up all of your insurance benefits through HR and not through payroll, this is one of the additional functionalities you get. The benefit of is that you have the ability to flag this code as being an ACA health plan, and yes or no whether or not it meets the minimum essential coverage. So if you're assigning this code to a person, then when you come in here, this will be enabled. It will not be grayed out, and it's going to give you the place to tell it what is the Series 2 code. If a person selects this option and they sign up and they enroll in this plan, when it becomes effective, whatever date it becomes effective on, what is the Series 2 code? And again, that's something that I can't answer for you, but if they have the coverage, then the Series 2 code is going to be the fact that they're now enrolled. So that's probably going to be 2C 99% of the time. And when it's there and you assign it over in payroll, it's going to now come across, in the Resource Master. I thought I left it open. In their ACA history, see the Series 2 code, 2A. So what this grid is designed to do is, this is the place where you account for the entire 12 month of time, and that's the information that needs to print on their 1095Cs. So you've got to account for it. So in this example, this guy on the 1st of January had a Series 1H code, no offer of coverage, because he's not working for you yet. We're going to say he was hired on March 1st. So no offer of coverage, and his Series 2 code was 2A, employee not employed during the month. But then he comes along, and this is something that I started manually, so I'm gonna have to finish it manually. Then he became eligible on March the 1st. So now his Series 1 code changes to 1E, and his Series 2 code would be that he's enrolled. Okay, so this is manually. But the other way that this 2C could have populated would be if I had set him up with the insurance benefit code where I just showed you, and then that would pull over in that from the place that I was just showing you. If that makes sense. If an employee leaves, then you've got to account for that period of time. So let's say he was a short-termer, and oops, he left at the end of April. So now we're expiring him. His expiration date is now going to be 04/30/15. So we got to go there. And now we've got more time to account for. So on 5/1/15, his series, I can't type today, his Series 1 code. And again, this is a drop-down selection, so you're selecting a separate line for the 1s and a separate line for the 2s. So now he's back to, I guess, to no offer of coverage. And he didn't come back for the rest of the year. It can be a lot more complicated than this. I'm kind of... And also on 5/1, we have to have one of each. We have to have a Series 1 and a Series 2 for 5/1. So what's the Series 2 code for somebody that's terminated? I guess it would just be not a full-time employee or not employed during the month.
2A.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
2A.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what I figured. I guess if they dropped to part-time instead of actually being terminated, then you would choose the one that says not full-time employee. Anyway, so I can't really, we can't as consultants give you tax advice and tell you which codes to use. This is something that has to be, researched by your insurance agent, to help you with this. And again, there were the links. If you go in the tutorial, there are the links to the IRS regs on it that shows you at great length and in great detail what each of these codes are for and when they're used and what the rules are for each one of those. So if you really want to get into it, you can go to the IRS and try to figure it out and drive yourself absolutely crazy, because it is not fun and it is not easy. I will tell you that. So as soon as possible, like I said, start working on this. I had to help a company a few years ago that had, and it was already February and this was due in March, and they had like 2,000 employees and lots of people that came and went throughout the year. So that was a lot of fun. You don't want to let yourself get to that point. And once it's populated, and again, I'll just show you the quick version because the majority of it is in the tutorial, but in payroll, when you're ready, there is a program. Now, I'm not going to be able to actually have it populate and do this because we don't have the latest anything. The problem is that there's not enough. I discovered the other day when I was testing this, there's just not enough payroll entered and hours in a current year to make this meaningful in any way. So what happens is you're going to fill out some basic information in here. Let's see if there's anything. Yeah, so he's in there. So that's the only one that it populated. But everything's going to be kind of like the W-2 forms. It's kind of all in one place. You're going to go to the tasks and you're going to hit initialize ACA. And you're going to have a choice to whether you're initializing the information out of human resources or out of payroll. So if you've got the HR module and you've been doing all the things I suggested, of course, you'll select human resources. I'm going to just change it to all employees to see if anybody comes in. I'm just going to do initialize. I'm not going to do any filters right now. So 2 employees. And then you can go over here and see what it did. It added 2 more to the one that I had already put in manually. Okay, so he's offered all 12 months. If you don't have the HR module, you have to populate this form, this information, either manually or as an import. There is an import template available. So if you've got the information offline somewhere and you want to import it, you know, from an Excel file, you can do that. You probably need some, you know, IT help with that, but there is an import form. You can double click on any one of these to see what it pulled in for that person. Not really much on him. Okay. Just, because he didn't have any hours, really. I already looked at this. There's no hours for these people. But the better way to do it, rather than just clicking on them one at a time, what's really kind of nice is you can go back to this main processing menu, and under tasks, you can just say print ACA forms. And you don't have to worry about it being, oh my God, I can't print the forms now because what if they're wrong? Well, just print them to plain paper, because you can always go back and do this as many times as it takes. Believe me, with the customer I helped that had a couple of thousand employees, we did this quite a few times until they were right. And she had to, you know, tweak it repeatedly. But you can preview them. Let's see what it shows. So you can preview them to see after you finish filling out that grid like I showed you, and seeing if you're getting the results you expected. This one is saying 1E under all 12 months, and it doesn't have a code in each of the months, because I did it when I initialized it the other day when I was testing. I did it by just selecting that option when I initialized to say all 12 months for him. But if you're doing it in the HR grid, even if they are there for all 12 months, then it's going to put codes all the way across here for January to December. But if you do it, if you tell it all 12 months, you know, to only fill out that box, it can do that. Let me see if it did anybody else's. Yeah, see, I don't know, it did a form, but there was no information in the system even to populate. So I apologize, I can't give a great demonstration with data in it, but I just wanted to show you the steps. So this is one of the steps, is to print the forms, and you can just look at them on your screen, and if nothing is pulling in and nothing is there, then you know something's wrong. And, you know, I can definitely help you troubleshoot that and see if we can figure out what's going on. But again, if you have HR, everything boils down to that HR ACA history tab on the HR Resource Master. You've got to get all that information in and get it in correctly, or this won't work. But if you've got it in, it will definitely save you some time going forward in the following years. So, any questions on some of the basics of that? I know that there's still a lot more to it, and I'm sure you're going to want to read all that fun material on ACA processing, but I just kind of wanted to get you going on what needs to happen early on. We're about at the end now, a little bit past. Any quick questions? No? Well,
Leslie, this is Nancy. My question is, I couldn't get on the Clearview. I couldn't get the year-end guide to download. I mean, it seriously was sitting here for 20 minutes cranking, and I got out of it, tried again, and it never would. It says it's downloading, but it never does. So can you assist with that later? Or
I can try. I mean, I could get on a WebEx and look at it with you.
Okay.
Have you tried? Have you been on?
Heidi and I would like to get that going.
Let me ask you this: when you go and I know you've been on Clearview before, but have you been able to do, like, for example, print a knowledge base article or download anything like that before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It might be because you're on the cloud, and if you accessed it from the help menu while you're in the cloud server, maybe that's the issue. So it might actually be easier to just, go on, in your own computer, just open up your own browser and go to the website that way, so that you're not going through the cloud to the cloud to the different cloud or something. I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, because I was going through.
Yeah. Yeah. So you might want to try
cloud.
that. You can copy the link, the URL at the top, and then just close out of the cloud or minimize it and go to your regular server, your own computer, your own browser. I recommend Chrome and not IE, but go to Chrome, for example, and paste it in there and try to log in. You'll have to log back in, and try to access it that way.
All right.
Okay.
We were having some issues initially logging on, so we might have missed it, but did you cover the process bonus checks, how to?
I did not. Thank you. I'm sorry. So that, let me go back in here. Yeah, and I know if you guys have to drop off, that's fine. I don't mind staying a couple extra minutes.
Well, Leslie, one second. This is Jenny Cater, and I was going to tell everybody that we are recording, so we will go ahead and I'll send you a link to the recording as soon as we get it uploaded onto the site in a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
So if you missed the very beginning, because I know a few people, we were scrabbling, if you missed, you can log back in and hear the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So, thank you, Jenny. Yeah, I appreciate that. Any of your help to help get back in touch with everybody to send out those things. So the bonus checks, back here at the main menu, there's an FAQ document, so I would definitely go to that. Notice this point here about it being very important to process them in the correct order. This is especially if you're doing bonus checks in the same pay period or close to the same pay period as a regular pay. You can do, as you know, when you do a payroll pay period control, it defaults to a pay sequence 1. Well, if you're going to do the payroll run, the bonus run under the same pay period control, but a separate check, which of course it probably would be. But if you want them to have a second check in that same pay period, you must process the regular pay before the bonus one. Okay? Because you can have these limits, that some people that make the higher income could hit those limits, and it's going to mess up if you're not doing them in order. And another thing here is, I'll go to the read. No, it's not here. Anyway, this is a document that shows you the basic steps to creating a bonus run, but I don't know, maybe it was in the facts. I know that it tells you in here there's a place where you have to determine whether or not you're grossing up. Here it is. Yeah, how do I gross up a bonus check? So a lot of times you've probably seen this where the boss says, I want them to get a check for $200 after taxes. I don't care what you have to do, just make it come out to an even $200. And, sometimes that happens, and they may not want you to withhold any taxes, but of course you have to withhold at least the FICA, the Social Security taxes, or you'll be paying penalties and the company will have to be paying their share at the end of the year plus penalties. So this is a good example right here. It gives you an example of how to do the math. It's got the formulas in here. So if you've got, again, this is why I was hoping all of you could get into Clearview while we're doing this, so you can kind of follow along and print it out. So you don't have to remember where to go back after. But this is the formulas for how to do a gross up. Another thing that's, let me go back into the FAQs. Why did my taxes come out too high? how do I print live payroll checks when they're set up for deposit? Oh, because that's easy. So in the setup in Vista, take in there, you've got in your earnings codes, I'm sorry, wrong one, deduction liability codes. Over here, under the federal income tax deduction code, you see this calculate as rate of gross on bonus sequence right here. So this is optional to whether or not to even use this, but if you want to just go up to the statutory minimum rate that you're supposed to withhold on bonuses as opposed to overriding it for everybody because your boss or somebody is saying, no, don't do it. Make them all fill out new W-4 forms, whatever you have to do. If you're going to do, say, the 28%, then you're going to want to check this box and put in 28% there. It will only do the 28% rate if the system knows that this is a bonus run. How does it know it's a bonus run? In your payroll pay period control, when you set this up, over here, these pay sequences, you could have this a sequence 2, or if it's the only one, if you're doing it in a separate week by itself, you can call it bonus checks. And if you check this box that says it's bonus, then it knows to look at that 28% rate. So that's how that works together. And you've also got this option to override direct deposit. So if you do that, because you want everybody to get a real check for their bonuses, that's all you have to do is check that box, and they'll get checks instead of direct deposit. Okay? But again, a bonus check can be a sequence too, a second check within the same week ending date, or you can set up an entirely different one.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing it.
So those are the basic options. And then, you've always, and of course, every company, I don't think I've ever seen a company that didn't have this situation. There's always a possibility that, it's going to be the 28% rate, except that so-and-so told me that he wants or extra withheld from his bonus just this time. So you can let it go ahead and process the normal settings, and then once you hit the process button, I need a shortcut here. Here we go, weekly process. In employee pay sequence control, you've always got the option to override anything and everything you want. It's a dangerous tool in employee pay sequence control. So if this is the person that said they wanted extra, but only from their bonus run, you can look at what it calculated, say, for federal withholding tax, and hit this override button and say, okay, 300. And that's all you have to do.
Match ProLine. What I did. In here. Yeah. Oh, gosh. You could have done it here to match ProLine. Oh, but you have to rerun those.
Okay. So again, I recommend that you go back to the FAQs on that little tutorial, that section of the training on bonuses, and read through all the rest of it, because I don't know if I've covered every scenario and every possibility. That and vehicle allowances, for example, those types of year-end things. There's articles about how to separate the difference between whether or not the employer or the employee is going to pay the taxes on it. For example, you're recording year-end things like vehicle use. There's ways to do it if the employer is going to cover the taxes versus whether the employee is going to do it. So make sure you look for those and read those articles. It's got the step-by-step on both scenarios. About out of time. I don't want to hold you up. Anybody have any more questions?
Leslie, let me ask one quick question. This is Tina and Amy Chris from Behringer.
Hi.
If we If we just completed our payroll run this week and close it this Friday,
Okay.
can we start a run on Monday for the bonus run
Yeah.
in sequence 2?
Well, it wouldn't be sequence 2 if you're going to start a new one. So if you've already closed it, you can reopen it and add a new sequence, but that really wouldn't make much sense. I mean, if it were me, I would just do a new sequence. Now, I say that, however, a pay period control, the payroll week ending date has to be unique. So when do those checks have to be dated at the same date as their regular payroll?
No, these are going to be dated as of the 14th.
Yeah, I mean, so if it doesn't matter, let me see if I can see some dates in here that are examples of December. No. I mean, when you set up a pay period control and then you close it, like say this one has a week ending date of 5/17/10. The bonus run, if your week ending dates are, say, always a Sunday or always a Friday or whatever, you can make the bonus run in a new pay period control group all by itself with a completely different payroll ending date. And that's kind of nice sometimes because it's helpful when you're reading reports and you know that one kind of stands out like a sore thumb because it's like, okay, the real payroll ended on December 12th, but here's a payroll that ends on December 13th. What is that? Well, it's the bonuses because they're a one-off date.
Got it. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I like it when it's got its own pay period control set up and it's got a week ending date that has nothing to do with your normal week ending dates.
Got it.
So the only reason I would do multiple payment sequences is when it has to be, it has to be in the same run or the same week.
Got it. So if we had our regular payroll run and then we were doing the bonus on top, then we would do the different sequence, right?
Right.
Okay.
So now we would just, if we do it by itself, it'll just be pay sequence 1?
Right. Yeah. So the pay sequence just refers to which, multiple checks in the same week.
Got it. Okay. But like this one, we can actually click the bonus box. That way it would get the 28%, right?
Right.
Okay. Got it. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for all the rest of you who hung on late with me, and I appreciate it. And sorry about the technical difficulties in getting started. But feel free to reach out to me or to Jenny about getting the recording, or if you want any of those things I shared earlier, like my little payroll accumulations testing spreadsheet, algebra fun. I'll be happy to send you that as an example.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Y'all take care and good luck with everything. I know how stressful this time of year is, but just take it off one little chunk at a time.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.